Erev Tov, everyone. It is Monday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the House of Seven Beggars. Therefore, it must be the Old Rabbis Discuss with Rabbis A squared, Rabbi Aryel and Rabbi Ancel. So let's bring Rabbi Ancel on. It's good to have you all here. Let's see what we got in the chat room while we're getting that done. We have Simcha, who will be back. Donald, Marilyn, and Marshall so far. So let's bring Rabbi Ancel in, and I'll unmute him. It's one of these. Turn that one off. Okay, let's see. Where's my desktop? There's my desktop. Okay, so we're back. We're on now.
Shalom, everybody. Erev Tov.
Yeah.
This evening we are going to discuss a subject which I'm very, very, very familiar with. It's a subject that I have attended many, many times in hospitals, being called to attend to someone who is about to meet God, sometimes to hold hands because their loved ones couldn't take the pain, so I would be sitting in the room until they passed on. So tonight we're going to be talking about death and mourning. In death, other than a select few prohibitions, in Judaism not only permits but often requires a person to violate the 613 commandments if necessary to save a life. Because life is so valuable, we are not permitted to do anything that may hasten death. So euthanasia, suicide, assisted suicide are strictly forbidden by Jewish law. However, where death is imminent and the patient is suffering, Jewish law does permit one to cease artificially prolonging life.
Right.
Thus, in certain circumstances, Jewish law permits pulling the plug or refusing extraordinary means of prolonging life. Mourning practices in Judaism are extensive, but they're not an expression of fear or distaste for death. Jewish practices relating to death and mourning have two purposes. One is to show respect for the dead, which is called Kavod Hamet. And the other one is to comfort the living, Nihum Avelim. And they are the ones who will miss the deceased. We care for the dead. After a person dies, the eyes are closed. The body is laid on the floor and covered, and candles are lit next to the body. The body is never left alone until after the people who sit, and we discussed this before that, Hakal Shomrim. It comes from the root of Shin Mem Resh, meaning guards or keepers. Respect for the dead body is a matter of paramount importance. For example, the Shomrim may not eat, drink, or perform any commandment in the presence of the dead. To do so would be considered mocking the dead, because the dead can no longer do these things that we the living can do. Most communities have an organization that cares for the dead, and they're known as the Hebra Kadisha, which is called the Holy Society, and we've talked about the Holy Society.
Right.
We are volunteers. Their work is considered extremely meritorious because they're not performing a service for someone who can never repay them.
And that's an interesting point, because I mean we are coming up on the in the Torah reading. We'll be coming up fairly soon on the first Tahara.
Yes.
Which was Moshe Rabbeinu.
Correct.
That Hashem himself did the Tahara for Moshe Rabbeinu.
Let's talk about something else. Autopsies in general are discouraged.
I'm sorry, you kind of broke up a little.
I'm sorry?
I said you broke up a little bit.
I said autopsies in general are discouraged as desecration of the body. They are permitted when the local law requires it. But when autopsies must be performed, they should be minimally intrusive, and also a Hebrew Kadisha must be present at the autopsy. Been there many, many times.
Yeah. Now, Colleen has a question.
Yes.
She says, do Ashkenazi open a window in the room after the passing?
Do Ashkenazis open the window?
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
Why?
You tell me.
They say that to allow the soul to go and leave and go to God, because we were taught by the rabbis that until a body is buried, the soul roams around because it cannot find its place. That's
Right.
why the cavern where the body is buried is called the final resting place. So once the coffin is covered, then the soul can go where it's needed. But until then, it roams and roams and it cannot leave. So that's one of the reasons.
Well,
Also,
there's
we
a few other things that happen too at the time of death. Now the pouring out of all the standing water in the house and the covering of the mirrors.
yes. Oh, the mirrors are covered. Oh, of course. Also, what I you notice that when a person expires, their mouth is never closed. It's always open. It says that's where the soul leaves the body. The presence of a dead body is considered a source of ritual impurity.
Right.
For this reason, a Kohen need not be in the presence of a corpse, not even for his parents.
Right. Yeah.
People who have been in the presence of a body, they wash their hands before entering a home. Not a physical uncleanliness. It applies regardless of whether you have physically touched the body or not.
Right.
In preparation for the burial, the body is thoroughly cleaned and wrapped in a simple plain linen shroud. The sages decreed that both the dress of the body, which is the final clothing, and the coffin should be very, very simple,
Mm-hmm.
so that a poor person would not receive less honor and death
Right.
than a rich person. The body is wrapped in the talit, which one that tzitzit is rendered invalid. Embalming is not allowed, and no organs or fluids may be removed. When there is an autopsy, basically the body is still in a plastic bag, so any
Mm-hmm.
blood loss stays in the bag, and the bag gets buried with the deceased.
Now, Marilyn, this is kind of to jump back to what you were talking about before. Marilyn's saying that she asked, is autopsy permitted if the death is suspicious?
If it's by law, if the law requires it, you know,
Right, but
let's
somebody
say
from the
the
Hever Kadesha has to be there.
have to, yeah, when somebody passed away and there was a question of the reason why he died, and especially in Florida where I was, and the doctor said this body needs to go to the coroner. So I was called. They would come and pick me up with the deceased, and we would go to the coroner's office, and she or he would do the autopsy, and I would be in attendance, and I would make sure that there's no blood went down the drain, everything was done accordingly, and basically, if the coroner would look at the body and basically was satisfied that she didn't have to go open totally, she would do us a small section and she would do her job, and that would be it.
Uh-huh.
Um, After that, she would leave the body. I would basically sew up the body because I did the sewing because the state would say it's too expensive for the doctor to do the sewing. So we did the sewing up of the body, and we followed the body to the what do you call it? Star of David, to the house where the preparation of the body would be going on, and the burial.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Not yet, but I have a question now. In a case where like where you were in Florida, and where I am, we actually have a Hevra Kadesha that actually has a facility for doing that. So what happens if there isn't a facility for doing that?
There was someone outside. Didn't hear the total question.
Oh, I said, now where you were in Florida and where I am here, we have a Hevra Kadesha that has the full facilities for taking care of the Met. And but what happens when the community doesn't have a facility for taking care of the Met?
Okay, I'll give you an example. I live now in the Dominican Republic, right? Uh, a burial place. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
outside there's a small little room that is strictly for a tahara.
Okay,
Can a tahara be done in somebody's house?
that's what I was kind of getting to.
It's not recommended.
Right.
It's not recommended. You're better off doing it somewhere where nobody can see, but you're outside. But in somebody's house, even of a relative, no,
So
it
the
is
body
not
the body should
not
be taken to another place, and then the tahara done there. But it doesn't necessarily have to be in a facility for that.
no, no, that's not. The tahara room really is. It's You can do it in the hospital. You can do it. A tahara room is basically a medical room. You can
Right.
when people do surgeries where it's except for the tahara room has a mikveh. Some of them do.
Yeah.
Some funeral homes are with the wealthy ones that have their own mikveh. And sometimes what we used to do, we use the three bucket method.
Right. Yeah.
You do what
Incline
you
the
have to
body
do.
and the
You do
three
what you have
continuous
to do,
pours.
but do it the right way.
Right.
Also, one of the most important things in Judaism that the body must not be cremated.
Yeah.
It must be buried in the earth. Coffins are not required, really. In Israel, they're not required. But if they're used, they must have holes drilled in them
Mm-hmm.
so that the body comes in contact with the earth. A lot of times I have seen uh, in Chabad burials where they would make sure that the funeral director was not around and two people would jump in and rip the bottom out of the coffin because it was just a plain coffin that was easily taken apart.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd seen in the old days where they when they built the coffin, actually the wood on the bottom was the slats were actually separated, so there was you didn't need to put holes in it because the bottom wasn't solid.
Yeah, but if, let's say when I was in Florida, you understand, they didn't do this. They waited for the family to leave and to everybody leave. You didn't want family to notice that because that would be too painful, to see them destroy the coffin. Although that is basically that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Funerals. When you're doing a funerals, the body is never displayed at funerals.
Yeah.
The
Well,
law
let's
in
let's
Torah
let's
was
step back. Hang on. Let's step back here a minute, and let's address this issue of the cremation, because a lot of people say, well, today it's more, it makes more sense to do it because we're not taking up land, but there's specific reasons why we don't do it.
well, if you believe that you will be resurrected when Mashiach comes, there's nothing left.
Right. Well, then
There's
it takes longer for the body to reconstitute because it has to come from a long way. Rabbi Craig has joined us in the chat room. Rabbi, I apologize for the last time you were in the chat room. I didn't realize you were in there until after we had signed off, so I wasn't ignoring you. I just didn't happen to notice. But we're always glad to have you. Okay, so. And I think people need to understand that the process of cremation does not actually turn the entire body to ash.
no.
That it actually has to go through basically what they call a hammer mill that actually pounds the bones and teeth and
Yeah,
in,
after there's nothing left, just the bones. They just. But here's the whole thing: is you know there could be bones left from somebody else, some other body.
yeah,
You know,
but
so you don't know if
it's not very
we have.
respectful of the dead.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said it doesn't show respect for the dead either.
Correct. Correct. I
Okay.
lost the sound.
Yeah, so now Marilyn has a question. She says, what Jewish law exempts victims of the Holocaust regarding cremation? I think the answer to that is that there was no choice in the matter. It's the same
Most
thing like,
people had no choice.
yeah, I mean it's the same thing as being tattooed. I mean we don't allow for tattooing, but in the Holocaust all those people were tattooed. They didn't have a choice.
Let me tell you, so from the 3 or 4 thousand taharas that I did in the 22 years, we did tahara of some people who were tattooed. But let's not forget the numbers from the Holocaust survivors. People actually had tattoos, and they say you are not allowed to do a tahara on them. But they say a person who tattoos the body doesn't belong to him, and he has a tattoo. He's not totally there. So the Rishonim said that it's allowed to do a tahara on them, and we did.
Well, it's the same as a suicide, that they figure that no Jew in his right mind, in it, that being the key thing, right mind, would allow themselves to be tattooed or would commit suicide because they know that the grave consequences of doing such.
At, at Stara David, if there was a suicide, there was a special place where people of suicide were buried, and they were buried near the fence.
Right. Now, Rabbi Wyckoff says that you do not cremate because it desecrates the body, which belongs to God, and you are sinning against God by destroying his creation.
I'm losing you.
I'm not going anywhere.
Aryel, I'm losing you.
Oh, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
You had a question for me.
No, I said Rabbi Craig had a comment. He said, you do not cremate because it desecrates the body which belongs to God, so you are
Yeah,
sinning against God by destroying his creation.
true. Now, in Florida, we had a law that before the ceremony started, or the casket was open, and they had to identify their beloved. But once they identified their beloved one and said that is them, casket was closed, never ever did a eulogy with the casket open. That is not allowed.
Right.
It's disrespectful. You know, it's just not done.
Okay, Colleen says, I had been taught no creation because a bone in the back of the neck. I've not heard that. Well, if Colleen, if you could elaborate on that, I'm not really sure what it is that you're getting at.
I can't hear anything.
Well, it really isn't much going on. I was waiting for a clarification from Colleen. Uh, yeah, winds must really be kicking up where you are. Rabbi Ancel is in the Dominican Republic, and they have a storm blowing in, and sometimes that kind of messes up the reception. So we'll marshal through as best as we can.
Yeah, it's really blowing down today.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, Jewish law
Oh,
requires.
okay. Maryland says there is a bone in the back of the neck that cannot be burned.
There's a bone in the neck.
That cannot be burned.
Not familiar with that one.
Yeah, okay, neither am I. Tell you the truth, yeah.
I can find out.
Okay.
Jewish law also requires that a tombstone be prepared so that the deceased will not be forgotten and that the grave will not be desecrated. It is customary in some communities to keep the tombstone veiled or to delay in putting it up until the end of the 12-month mourning.
Right.
The idea underlying this custom is that the dead will not be forgotten when he is being mourned every day. In communities where the custom is observed, there is generally a formal ceremony, which is called the unveiling ceremony, where the tombstone is covered. The rabbi, families, and loved ones and friends come, say a few prayers, say the Kel Mole Rachmi, say the Kaddish, and then the loved ones will remove the cloth and they will see the name of the deceased in English and in Hebrew and the date he was born, the date he was gone, and whatever they want to say about the deceased. They will say beloved father,
Right,
grandfather,
yeah.
whatever they decided.
Okay, so let's get back in and get into some of the customs that the mourners actually do in some customs. So like the sleeping on the floor.
Yes? Or sitting lower than everybody else in the room
Sitting
during the
lower, yeah.
Shiva period, the 7 days.
Yeah, I always found it.
Basically,
Yeah, I always found it
sorry?
really. I always found it really interesting that when you really look at the customs and the traditions that we have for the mourning period, that it's actually it moves you through the process of mourning so that a person doesn't actually get stuck in one place,
Sure.
which we see quite common, in the non-orthodox world. Let's call it non-orthodox world. You know, people who will mourn for a lost partner for the rest of their life. You know, they don't move past it. In Judaism, we have traditions that actually moves a person through that. And the whole thing about the sleeping on the floor and sitting on low stools and stuff like that, and it's yeah. When I looked at that, I interpreted that to say that, okay, what we're seeing here is that you feel terrible, right? And you want to have some kind of an expression of how you feel. So by sleeping on the floor and sitting on the low stools and stuff like that, it's just basically I want to feel as miserable as I feel on the inside.
Some people, when they come back from a funeral, the first thing they will do is dip an egg in ashes. Some really orthodox. Some of them put sacks of ashes on their heads as a sign of mourning. They want to feel the pain
Yeah.
of losing a loved one.
Yeah. I feel bad on the inside. I want to feel as bad on the outside as I feel on the inside.
Yeah, like there's some very Orthodox Jews that when they lose a father, they,
No, I think we lost you.
they will stay as father as they can. I'm sorry?
So we lost you there for a minute. You said that there are in certain Orthodox, very Orthodox communities, when a person loses the father and then you cut it out. So what were you
He
going to
will
say?
not come close to that casket for no reason. But if he loses a mother, they will put chairs beside the coffin. They'll actually hug the coffin.
Hmm.
Why?
Hmm. I would think because the mother is the one who brought them into the world.
Yes, they say, even though you're 100%, that's your father. He can be the chief rabbi of Israel. You cannot be sure it's your father. But a mother only one.
Right, yeah.
So, kind of a,
Yeah, a person can never be 100% sure about father, but they are absolutely 100% sure of mother.
right. Okay. Burial in a Jewish cemetery. Some cemeteries keep a separate place for burial of Jews, although in ancient practice, it was not mandated.
Really?
In the Talmud or in the codes of Jewish law, the Bible in Genesis 23 describes the acquisition by Abraham
Yeah,
of a private plot to bury his wife Sarah.
right.
And the Talmud also calls for burying one's own family plot. But are we allowed to be buried next to a non-Jew?
I would have to say, by the strict law, probably.
Because sometimes you have no choice.
Right.
But in Talmudic times, while the ancestral tombs continued to be used, public burial plots were already established. In one reference, the Talmud suggests that a righteous man cannot be buried next to a sinner, which would indicate that burying in communal cemeteries did take place. The sinner, the Talmud speaks, is one guilty of capital offense, which includes the worship of idols. Since idolatry was prevalent among non-Jews, all heathens, and by extension of all non-Jews, were placed in the same category. This is probably the rabbinic foundation for insisting that Jews be buried in their own cemeteries. In theory, and in emergencies, however, the law does permit a Jew to be buried next to a non-Jew.
So it's rabbinical, not Torah.
Yes. No.
Yeah.
So there was a case that there was a Jew living among non-Jews, and when he died, he left a message to people.
And we lost him again.
Filled, because it was far better to be buried among non-Jews than to be cremated, which is clearly a violation of Jewish law.
No, okay. So we kind of lost part of that, but I think we can fill in the blanks there. So I'm just scanning through the chat room. Let's see. Rabbi Wyckoff says no flowers are ever brought to a Jewish grave, but a stone may be placed on the tombstone to show you where. That's very interesting. I actually talked to a.
Go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
I was going to say I talked to a man who was he was part of a Heber Kadesha. He had been, I think he was like fourth or fifth generation Heber Kadesha, because that gets passed down from father to son and from mother to daughter. Some people actually, hold that dynastically because it's such a great honor. But I think he was like fourth or fifth generation. And he was saying, he was telling me that the custom of leaving the stone was not always the custom. He said that that originally, when Jews actually, moved out of the country and into the cities and stuff, and Jewish cemeteries were established, that and became less agrarian. That in the case of the widows and the orphans, they would go and they would glean in the field. But if there's no field for them to glean in, what did they do? So the custom became that people would go into the cemetery to visit relatives or whatever, and they would leave coins on the marker. And that in the evening time, the widows and orphans would come into the cemetery and they would collect up the coins. Well,
yeah, the poor people.
Right, and they would come in and they would collect the coins, and because they were getting charity and they didn't know who actually left it, that they would pray for the person whose name was on the headstone. Therefore, the deceased could continue giving charity or tzedakah after they had passed away.
True. And I always used to ask, and I was not ashamed to ask, because in Florida, I mean, the thousands of dollars that people brought flowers. If there was a funeral that I did inside the room, in understand, and if anybody walked in with flowers, I would tell the funeral directors to remove them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't start the eulogy. But outside, they would bring thousands of dollars worth. I said, why don't you just, those flowers are gone in a half an hour in the Florida sun. Why don't you just take the money and give it tzedakah to the poor people? There's people who cannot afford their rent. There's people who don't have food to eat. That's a bigger mitzvah.
Yeah.
Than flowers.
Well, I mean, in our tradition, we give flowers for happy occasions. So, I mean, bringing flowers to a funeral is like saying, hey, I'm glad you're dead.
I can understand why people, Jewish people, will come to a funeral dressed in black. You're not supposed to wear black. It's not a Jewish tradition. The funeral is not for the deceased, it's for the living. So you can wear white, you can wear anything. You don't have to come dressed in a big flowery dress. But why black? It's not a Jewish tradition.
But what about the custom of wearing something red?
Wearing something red?
Yeah.
Not familiar with it.
Oh, you're not? I'm surprised. No. I'm actually surprised at that. Wearing something red at a funeral to keep Lilith away, because she's always looking for a minion.
Never heard of that tradition.
Never heard of that. Oh, okay. I'm surprised. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's like kind of like the whole idea of what the breaking of the glass. One of the things about breaking the glass at the wedding is that the shattering sound keeps Lilith away. Or wrapping a newborn baby's crib with a red string until the 8th day to keep Lilith away. So it's
Yeah, they also used to say breaking the glass. You say, may your marriage last longer than it would take for all the pieces to be reassembled.
yeah.
Which is a nice wish, but
Yeah,
anyways.
I'm really surprised. I had one of my supervising rabbis, a Sephardic rabbi, always wore red to a funeral, always. And he said that's why. It's tradition that we wear red to a funeral because something red to keep Lilith away.
Never seen it.
Yeah, okay, maybe it's a Sephardic thing. Rabbi Ancel might not have been born when wearing red was a custom. So let's see. Let's catch up in the chat room here. Let's see.
What's our rabbi's name that is in attendance?
Oh, that's Rabbi Craig Wyckoff.
Okay.
So he's he's out in California, and we get he joins us every once in a while when he remembers if he has time. But I've known Rabbi Wyckoff for a long time. Let's see.
He should join us. He can. He has. I'm sure he has a lot of input also himself.
Yeah. Okay, so we have Donald says, right, Rabbi, and covering photos. Huh. Now, I knew about covering the mirrors. I mean, that's basically everybody. Photos I was not aware of.
I'm sorry, photos of what?
Photographs of people, I would assume.
Are we allowed to take photos?
No. He was saying, when we cover the mirrors, we also cover the photographs.
Yes. On mirrors and photographs, usually the photographs, they used to take them down. Sometimes if they didn't have enough covering, they would put paint on the mirrors, anything just to cover so.
Well, I was aware of covering the mirrors. I thought that just basically photographs were actually just taken down and put away.
Yeah, I used to take them down, especially of the deceased.
Yeah. So let's see what else we got going in the chat room. Okay, let's see. So sending food trays is a custom that she learned in this is Colleen, that she learned in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. She's also a Pirates fan, so yeah, we got to cut her a little slack. So the family sitting Shiva should not have to cook. Guests are supposed to serve the family as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the custom is people will bring food into the house.
Right.
So they don't have to cook. I don't think they would be in the mood to cook anyways. Yeah, most people will bring. I've seen people bring flowers too. So, and nothing surprises me.
Okay, Kelsey Lynn has joined us. Richard D has joined us. I saw him flash up there, and I wanted to make sure that we called him out. So let's see what else we got going in the chat room. The Red was a Sephardic custom. Let's see. Kelsey Lynn says sneaking in late, sneaking into the back. Let's see.
Here's a question that I asked you before. What happens if it is a leap year and we are supposed to mourn only for 12 months, actually 11 months and 1 day, which is considered 12 months. What happens in a leap year where there's 13 months?
Yeah, and like I said, I had never even thought about that, but according to according to the Shulchan Aruch, you don't do an extra month. You just
No,
do
it
the
adds a 12
the
month.
11 months
Yeah.
in one day.
Yeah. Take a break, or are we on a break, or we still have time?
We're about out at our break time. Why don't we go ahead and do that? We'll take our break. I'm going to go ahead and mute you if you don't mind.
Okay.
And I'm going to do it anyway, but I just thought I'd be polite. So let me mute Rabbi Ancel and take that off. Okay, so we're going to take our 6-minute break, and then when we return, we'll talk a little more about the customs of death and mourning. Stay tuned.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. Okay. Want to see. No, everybody's still here. Okay, so let me bring Rabbi Ancel back on here. And let me turn on his.
Some of the rabbis maintain the custom of not eating meals outside of the mourner's home. But they say that it applies only on weekday meals. On Shabbos, it is permitted to attend certain meals, which is bris, Seudah Shabbat, the Seudah Shlishi. Other poskim don't agree with this leniency, and they make no difference between Shabbos or weekdays. So they say you should speak to your own rabbi.
Yeah, because the laws of mourning suspend on Shabbat, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But most poskim will agree that a relative who's a mourner, whose absence from a simcha will surely be felt or noted by the participants, may attend any meal on Shabbos, even the Sheva Brochos meal. Why? It's because it is prohibited to make a public display of mourning.
Right.
On what? On Shabbos.
On Shabbos, yeah.
So, there are laws by the poskim, especially the Rama, and then the Shulchan Aruch, to get into it. We would need to study the laws of Shabbos and many other laws to understand their reasoning, why some of them are lenient and some of them are not lenient.
Right. I mean,
So
the whole
mourning practices. Jewish mourning practices can be broken into several periods of decreasing intensity.
Mhm.
These mourning periods allow the full expression of grief, while discouraging excess of grief and allowing the mourner to gradually return to a normal life. When a close relative, parent, sibling, spouse, or child first hears of the death of a relative, traditionally to express the initial grief, it is by tearing one's clothing.
Yeah.
You tear a shirt, a sweater, on the left side, which is your heart.
But
This
you're not allowed to tear an expensive garment, though, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
The tearing of the clothing is referred to as kelia, the tearing. The mourner recites the blessing, describing God as the true judge, and accepting of God's taking of the life of a relative. And the words Baruch are Baruch Dayan Haemet. From the time of death to the burial, the mourner's role and responsibility is caring for the deceased and preparing for the burial. This period is known as Animut.
Yep.
During this time, the mourners are exempt from all positive commandments because the preparations take first priority. This period lasts a day or two. Judaism requires what? Prompt burial. If
Right.
in Israel, usually if you pass away in the morning, you will be buried that day, even at night. During this period, the family should be left alone and allowed the full expression of grief. Condolence calls or visits should not be made during these times.
Well,
After the
you're
burial,
not even supposed to offer condolences to the family at the funeral.
you should.
Right.
After the burial of a close relative or a neighbor or a friend should prepare the first meal for the mourners, which is called Seudat Avraham, the meal of condolence.
Right.
This meal traditionally consists of eggs, a symbol of life, and bread. The meal is for the family only, not for visitors. After this time, condolence calls are permitted.
Yeah.
The next period of mourning is known as the Shiva,
Right.
which means 7, because it lasts 7 days. Shiva is observed by parents, children, spouses, and siblings of the deceased, preferably all together in the deceased home. Shiva begins on the day of the burial and continues on the morning of the 7th day after the burial. Mourners will sit on low stools or on the floor instead of chairs. They do not ever wear leather shoes. They are not allowed to shave or cut their hair. They're not allowed, women are not allowed to wear cosmetics. You're not allowed to go to work. And you do not do things for comfort or pleasure, such as bathe, have sex, put on fresh clothing, or study Torah, except Torah related to the mourning and grief.
Right.
Mourners will wear the clothes that they tore at the time of learning of the death or at the funeral. Mirrors in the house are covered. Prayer services are held where the Shiva is held, with friends and neighbors and relatives. But you need to make up a minyan of 10.
Yeah.
The Sabbath that occurs during the Shiva period counts towards the 7 days of the Shiva, but it is not observed as a day of mourning. You cannot not
Right.
allowed to mourn on Shabbos.
Now, Rabbi Craig brings up a point too that he says if a Jewish holiday occurs after the first day, that curtails the mourning period.
Well, I was just going to say, if
Yeah.
a festival occurs during the mourning period, the mourning is terminated.
Yeah.
Very good, Rabbi. But if the burial occurs during a festival, the mourning is delayed until after the festival.
Right. Now we talk about setting Shiva and the mourning period and stuff like that. Now, there are certain laws about what about delayed notifications, which is something that we have to be cognizant of today because we have members of the military that are overseas and they may not get the notification for a week. There's a famous story about Rabbi Nachman of Breslov when he went to Israel. He returned his daughter, and I don't remember which one, but his daughter passed away while he was in Israel. And when he got back, that he got back just before Rosh Hashanah. I mean, like just before Erev Rosh Hashanah. And so he went into a room and sat shiva for 3 hours, and then it was time for Erev Rosh Hashanah, and that was it.
That finishes the sitting in the morning.
Right. So in the case of a delayed notification, shiva starts when?
Let's say that you're notified on the sixth day of the Shiva. How long should you sit?
Well, that's the question. Do you start the 7 when you're notified, or does the 7 start?
Well, you were away. The rest of the family was not away, so they were sitting Shiva.
Right.
So you're coming home on the sixth day. You continue for the sixth day and the seventh.
Yeah.
You cannot go past 7 days.
Right.
Okay, so after the Shiva, we come to the middle period, which is called the Shloshim, which is 30, because it lasts for 30 days after the burial. During that period, the mourners do not attend parties or celebrations. They are not allowed to shave or cut their hair. And most of all, they're not allowed to listen to music. The final period of formal mourning is Avelut, which is observed only for a parent. This period lasts for 12 months after the burial. Usually it's 11 months and 1 day. That 1 day into the 12 months is considered the 12 month.
Right. And
During
why is
that
that?
time, mourners avoid parties and celebrations, dinner or concerts. For 11 months, for that period starting at the time of the burial, the son of the deceased recites what?
Okay, so now I lost my train of thought.
Okay, I said, for the 11 months of the period starting at the time of burial, the son of the deceased recites what?
Oh, the Kaddish Yatom.
The mourner's Kaddish.
Yeah.
Every day, morning and evening. Sigurd.
Thank you. Now that brings up, I think, why do we stop at 11 months and 1 day?
You're asking me why that 1 day is considered 12 months?
Well, no, I'm asking why do we only set Shiva for, why does the mourning period only last 11 months and 1 day?
Because that is a rabbinical law.
But why?
I really never thought about it. I would say prolonging it exactly for 12 months.
Well, the length of period that a person is in Gehenna is what?
12 months.
12 months. That's the maximum time anybody is in Gehenna. So we don't go 12 months because we don't want to give the impression that this was a really evil person.
But,
so we do 11 months and 1 day.
Okay, so here's the other question. What happens if the guy was?
Well, according, then we can go to the Talmud to a vote and go to Aharon, who said, "Judge every man towards righteousness."
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so after the Avelut period is complete, the family of the deceased is not permitted to continue formal mourning. However, there are a few continuing acknowledgement of the decedent. Every year, on the anniversary of the death, the family members observe the deceased Yartzai.
Yep.
Some recite the Kaddish, take an aliyah, in the morning, in the synagogue if possible. The mourners will light a candle in honor of their loved ones that burns for 24 hours. In addition, during the services on Yom Kippur, Shemini Atzeret, and the last day of Passover, and Shavuot, after the Haftarah reading in the synagogue, close relative recite the morning's prayer. What is it?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I said that in addition, during services on Yom Kippur,
Yeah.
Shemini Atzeret, the last day of Passover, and on Shavuot, after the Haftarah reading in the synagogue, close relatives recite what?
Oh, El Malay Rachamim.
No. It's called Yizkor.
Oh, the Yizkor service.
And also, Yotze candles are also lit on those days.
Yeah, but they recite the El Malay Rachamim, right?
But
During the Yizkor service.
So if a son loses
we were
a
both
father,
right.
if a son loses his father, but he has a living mother, he still says Yizkor. But when you're in the synagogue, but you have living parents, what happens? The rabbi usually kicks you out during Yizkor because you're not supposed to be there because your parents are alive.
Yeah.
When you visit a mourner, a guest should not try to express grief with, with standard shallow platitudes. The guest should allow the mourner to initiate conversations.
Mm-hmm.
One should not divert the conversation from talking about the deceased. To do so would limit the mourner's ability to fully express grief, which is the purpose of the mourning period. On the contrary, the caller should encourage conversation about the deceased. When leaving a house of mourning, it is traditional for the guest to say, "May the Lord comfort you with all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem."
Right, which is what we say after the last Salamon for Kabbalat Shabbat, where we before the mourners, when the mourners come in.
Yeah. Kaddish is commonly known as the mourner's prayer, but in fact, variations of the Kaddish prayer are routinely recited at many other times. And the prayer itself, I don't know why, but it has nothing to do with death or mourning.
Yeah.
The prayer begins with, "May his great name grow and exalted and sanctified in the world that he created and that he will." And it continues in a much. The real mourner prayer is what?
The real mourner's prayer?
The real mourner's prayer is the Kiamole Rachamim, which is recited at the grave sites and during funerals. So why do we say Kaddish? It's because after a great loss like the death of a parent, you might expect a person to lose faith in God or to cry out against God's injustice. Instead, Judaism requires a mourner to stand up every day publicly in front of a minyan and reaffirm his faith in God despite his loss. To do so inures to the merit of the deceased in the eyes of God, because the deceased must have been a very good parent to raise a child who could express such a faith in the face of such a big personal loss.
Interesting. Yeah.
So then, why is Kaddish recited only for 11 months and 1 day when the mourning period is 12 months? So, according to Jewish tradition, the soul must spend some time purifying itself so that it can enter heaven. So that's what you said.
Right.
The maximum time required for purification is 12 months. For the most evil person in the world, to recite Kaddish for 12 months would imply that the parent was the type who needed 12 months for purification. To avoid this implication, the sages decreed There are some who recite Kaddish for only 11 months in one day. A person is permitted to recite Kaddish for other close relatives as well as parents, but only if his parents are what?
Alive.
No,
Oh.
dead. Only if his parents are dead. Tombstones. Jewish law requires that tombstones be prepared so that the seeds will not be forgotten and that the graves will not be desecrated. It's customary in some communities to keep the tombstone. So we're going to go through the unveiling.
Yeah.
It is also customary in some communities to place small stones on the graves when visiting. This custom has become well known from the movie Schindler's List, in which the children of the survivors place stones on the graves of Oscar Schindler. The custom is not universal, even among traditional Jews. There seems to be some doubt of how it originated. It seems to have superstitious origins. It's a little like leaving a calling card for the dead person. So let them know you were there. Stones, unlike flowers, are permanent and do not get blown away in the wind. Some other sources suggest that it was originally done because we are required to erect tombstones, and tombstones that actually look like tombstones tended to get desecrated. What is written on a tombstone in most cases is very straightforward. Hebrew text similar to what you might see on a tombstone in English. You put the name of the deceased on top on the right hand corner. You would put the pay in the noon, which means Ponimam, here lives,
Mm-hmm.
or Ponigbar. The marks that look like a quotation marks are commonly used to indicate the abbreviation or a number written in letters. The next line is the name of the decedent. Is father's name, son all, or mother's name, daughter all. If one of the names is preceded by the letter resh, which indicates that the person is a rabbi, the names may also be followed by a little ha-kohen, which means he is a Kohen, or ha-levi, that he is a Levi. Indicates that this person was a Kohen or a Levite. The third line indicates the date of death. The line begins with the abbreviation Peno, which is also followed by the date and the month of the year. The date and the year are also written in Hebrew numerals, which are letters.
Yeah.
You may also find Jewish symbols on a tombstone, such as a menorah, a Magen David, a Torah scroll, a lion, or two tablets, which is the Ten Commandments. Most of these symbols don't tell you anything about the decedent, other than the fact that he or she was Jewish. However, if you see a picture of hands in a position like the one, normally indicates that the decedent was a Kohen.
Right.
Because the hand position is used when bless the congregation at certain times of the year. This is where Leonard Nimoy himself, a Jew, got the idea for live long and prosper.
Right. Yeah. 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 Because Leonard Nimoy was a Kohen, and he saw his father do that.
And this is death and mourning. Do we have some questions for me? Also, if people want all these things that I have read sent to them, as just for reading purposes, to get more familiar, I have no problem sending them through emails.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, Rabbi Craig, I am on. We are on Skype. I don't know if you have Skype or not. I'm not a messenger on this computer, so we need to. We'll have to make arrangements so we can get you in as part of the old rabbis.
Yeah, I'm sure he can supply some good information to us from
Yeah,
his
because
experiences.
he was asking, can I call you? I have a very interesting story about the cottage. I would like to hear it, but if you have Skype, yeah, you can. I don't know if I actually have him in my Skype list or not. Huh. Let's see. Let's see if we can find him here. Let's see. Let's add people and no, I don't. I don't have him in my. I don't have you in my Skype, Rabbi. Unfortunately. So next week. So let's see.
We're looking at short time. I mean, we got too much time.
Nah, I mean, it's. Oh, what time is it? Yeah, we got about 20 minutes. But yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier about that we needed to keep this kind of straightforward because I mean, when you really get into it, there is a lot of laws and rules about this. Correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, to get into all the nuance and detail of it, yeah, would be rather confusing to people.
I mean, if you want to get into the Shulchan Aruch, what they say about death and mourning, and you want to get into what Auerbach said about what he allows and what he disallows, and then Rama is the most lenient, but most rabbis don't agree with him, and
Yeah,
then he explains the reasons why, and then they will say no. So you can get into some discussions where you can get totally confused,
yeah,
especially when it has to do with mourners attending weddings. Who can attend? When can he attend? Why can he attend? What he can do? Rama said, Auerbach said, a mourner can attend a wedding anytime, but he must be a server in the kitchen.
uh,
I don't understand.
yeah, huh,
So he's not really at the wedding, but he's in the kitchen serving. So I have all the writings about Rama and Auerbach and some of the posting, but sometimes you need to be a lawyer to be able to decipher.
boy, yeah, yeah, that's true. Rabbi Craig says Shulchan Aruch says when doing the eulogy, it is permissible to exaggerate the good points of the deceased.
Are you
So,
allowed to
so
praise the deceased?
actually, no, you're not.
Well, first of all, uh, as a rabbi, first of all, you do not know the deceased. So basically, the children or the relatives will tell you what to say. Most of the time, when I talk to the family regarding the funeral, I said, "Why don't you do the honors? You do the eulogy. You know the person best.
Hmm.
I can only say what you tell me. I will not embellish the eulogy. I have no right to do that. So a lot of times, the son or the daughter, would get up, and then the rabbi learns who the person was.
Yeah, I've also heard that, if the guy, if the deceased was just a terrible, rotten person, you know, that rather than giving a eulogy about the person, you should talk about, death and mourning and all of that, and just kind of skip over the attributes of the deceased.
I'm going to tell you something that I really don't like to talk about. That's something that happened. Probably my worst funeral. I received a phone call from a gentleman, and he said, "You, Rabbi, you were recommended. I just lost my dad. Would you do the funeral?" I said, "Yes." I said, I always talk to the loved ones. I said, "Would you like your parent, to have a tahara, to go to God the right way?" Most people agreed. Some of them were not interested. Anyways, he didn't want. So we're in the funeral home. We're in the room. There are pews on both sides. There's a center aisle going towards where the casket is, and to the left was the stand where I would speak. So while we're walking down, and it's a full house, while we're walking down, he says to me, "Rabbi, what shall I say?" I said, "Jewish traditions, you can go over, because before, like I said, before the eulogy, the casket was open. So I said, listen, if you approach your dad and you ask Mechila, you ask forgiveness, Dad, I forgive you. If you said something bad of me, please forgive me. If I said something bad about you." Well, that's exactly what he said. Unfortunately, his father didn't answer. And he just went off the tangent. I ran out of the room. I mean, some of the words that I heard never heard in my life. But after he was finished swearing and everything else, he was fine. He went out and he did a eulogy that I almost cried. He had to just get it off his chest.
Yeah.
And he became normal again. But I've never seen anything like that in my whole entire life. But I've seen some funerals from A to Z. So most funerals were the way they were supposed to be.
Yeah, people tend to be a little more respectful at a funeral. A little more well behaved, shall we say. Not always, but yeah.
I I really didn't. I did not totally approve doing a funeral when they were going to mausoleums, but I had no choice. It's the family or the deceased chose that. And
Yeah. Well, what about like in New Orleans? I mean, they have to be put in, or do they? No, I guess they don't.
no, in Florida, they don't really don't put them into the ground directly. There's a cement liner,
Right.
and they put the casket in the cement liner, and then they put a lid on top, and then they cover it, because one of the reasons is because of the hurricanes.
Right.
Uh, and make sure that it stays there. There was the hurricane. Well, I actually went through 3 hurricanes in Florida. One of the hurricanes was Andrew, and there's a funeral place that's where non-Jews are buried, about 2 or 3 miles from Saladale. Uh, that thing, those roads, the main roads were blocked off for 2 or 3 weeks because you didn't want to pass by, because they had no liners and there was deceased all over the place. It was not a nice sight.
Yeah.
So they make sure Jewish that at Saladale that there's liners. That lid alone weighs about 500 pounds.
Yeah, I know they require that where I live. They require that they be buried in a vault also.
Yeah. It's not waterproof. It just doesn't let the casket float to the surface.
Right. Yeah, because that would be, yeah.
That was a big mess, but then you
Well,
don't know who's who, what's what.
Well, I remember when my grandmother died, and we were the funeral. We were taking the casket down, and it was it was bitter cold. We were like 50 below zero. It had been raining and snowing, and everything was covered with ice. And her plot was on the side of a hill, going right down to the express, or right down to the main road. So that was interesting.
In Canada, I attended a few funerals. You know how they get the land unfrozen? They use a hot plate
Yeah,
overnight, and it melts the ground, and they're able to dig the grave.
yeah. Well, it's better than using dynamite.
Yep. Must be buried. It's law.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're about at the end of our time. So
Thank you for listening to me. I hope I give you enough information. Like I said, if anybody has questions, please don't hesitate to write to me. Rabbi Aryel can give you my email address. If you want any special other discussions, I would like open discussions sometimes too.
yeah, I want to do more of that, and we will do more of that. Just kind of off the cuff, whatever happens, or wherever it leads us, it leads us. So yeah, we'll do that, and we'll make arrangements to get Rabbi Craig in with us. And so
Yeah, I'd like the rabbi to join us.
yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on mute, and then I'll get the lead out. And if you'll hang on, and I will get back with you as soon as we're out. And we go ahead and turn this. I have ultimate power. I can mute whoever I want. Oh, it's wonderful. Okay, so I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Don't forget, there will be no Torah study this week. I will actually be out of town, and I will not be back in time for the study. So no Torah study this week. Friday, as usual, Kabbalat and Mariv Shabbat service at 8 p.m. and Shabbat morning, Shachrit and Musaf at 10 a.m. Eastern. I know where it is. I know where I am. You would think I would know where I am. Anyway, don't forget we have it's a double parsha and an extra parsha. So we got a what do you call it? Trifecta this week. So and then right back here again on Monday, God willing, and we will hopefully have Rabbi Craig with us at that time. And until then, we will just simply say, Laila Tov.